Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Noxcast, your Equinox News Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Hope. I'm the Managing Executive Editor of the Equinox.
And I'm Erno, the news editor.
And thanks for joining us once again for another news recap. No announcements this week, but we do have a pretty action-packed recap for you in store. So let's just jump right into it with our top story in news, which is from our staffer, Sam, who did a piece about Native American Heritage Month, which is the entire month of November, and some of the events happening on campus, which is Crafternoon, which is themed around Indigenous heritage, hosted by the Office of Community and Belonging, and there will also be a tabling event where during Red Shower Day. In addition to that, the article sort of talks about local, historical aspect to it, and sort of just how the Keene community interacts and how that sort of ties into Native American Heritage Month.
Yeah, and I think Sam did a great job with it. I remember when I was coming up with news topics for this week, I thought it'd be a really interesting one to cover. I don't think we covered it last fall, and I think it's just a very important topic on campus. I remember when I went to the railroad discussion, it was a part of the talk at the beginning of it, and I think it's just interesting to learn more about the Indigenous people that have a historical claim to this land that we go to college on.
Yeah, we've sort of talked about Noxcast many episodes ago, but sort of, it's not as prominently, I guess, known about some of the history with Native Americans when it comes to like the Northeast and the North in general, because so much of the currently existing federally recognized tribes, at least, are more prominent in like the Western states like Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico. So that's kind of sometimes unfortunately overlooked by people, but of course, we are on Native American land. There are plenty of land acknowledgements that college officials give at the start of speeches. But I think it's important to sort of dig a little bit deeper sometimes to talk about like what it actually means and sort of what the actual history is, because, actually being able to learn, why things are the way they are, what happened previous to us sort of informs us about the future and how we can, avoid bad things, and then, advocate for better treatment of people of all groups, including Native Americans. So, yeah, I think that was a nice little piece. As for the top story in region and state, this is a story from the Keene Sentinel. Sophia Kashmiri did a piece about SNAP benefits lapsing as a result of the prolonged government shutdown. So if you don't know, SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It is a federal program where people who are in need of food assistance and meet the eligibility requirements are given a certain amount of money to spend on food, as just like bare necessities, basically, to get by. As a result of the government shutdown now creeping into the early days of November and is still ongoing as of filming this, SNAP benefits are not being continued for the month of November. There was a court order where the benefits had to at least partially be dispersed, but I believe up until this point, the Trump administration has sort of not followed through with that. But anyways, in any event, there are local resources that this article talks about in terms of businesses and local organizations that are sort of stepping up and offering free and discounted food for those who have like a matching ID and an EBT card with like the same name on it. EBT is electronic benefit transfer card, and that's where SNAP benefits sort of get loaded onto. And so I think it's a nice, as sort of bleak or grim of like a topic as it is to talk about people losing, at least for some period of time now, food benefits, the fact that there are people in the community that are willing to step up and fill in gaps that were needlessly created, but just being able to do what they can to sort of help out and make sure people have the food that they need, I thought was a sort of nice little thing to see during times like these.
Yeah, and I know we covered this a bit in the news section as well. It's a very pressing topic at the moment, and it affects a lot of people's lives, and I think it's just horrible. I really hope the government shutdown ends soon because we're seeing all these terrible effects it's having just on the general population, and it's always the normal people that are paying for the government's problems.
Yeah, and that was also the topic of our editorial, was talking about more broadly just the impacts of the shutdown in general, with all of the federal workers who reside in New Hampshire not receiving paychecks during this period of time. Um, Back pay is usually supposed to be given at the conclusion of a shutdown. That's also unclear as to whether that will happen. Um, so, still more uncertainty with that. But basically, the crux of what we were saying is that, it is very, I guess, just appalling and sort of disappointing to see that Congress can't do the most basic function of its purpose, which is keeping the government funded and functioning properly and efficiently and everything like that. We mentioned in the discussion how there hasn't been a full funding bill passed by Congress since 1996. We've sort of continuously passed different funding bills that are like temporary, short term, or they only fund, part of the federal government, and then we do another bill that funds another part, because there can never be an agreement about here's the complete spending bill. Um, but that is just, like the one thing that Congress absolutely needs to do is just keep the government funded and open. And some of the most immediate impacts of that we're seeing are with SNAP benefits, in terms of affecting people not having their paychecks, but then also recently, and this wasn't mentioned in the editorial because I believe the announcement came maybe the day after, that the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, announced that a percentage of the air traffic space, or the air traffic, is going to be reduced. So there's going to be like less planes going on certain routes because they just don't have the staff to continue operating airports at full function because of the shutdown. And so as we just keep on going and going and going now, it doesn't seem like there's signs of immediate progress, at least. It doesn't sound like there's any like recent meetings that have happened between Democrats and Republicans. And I don't know that anybody fully expected it to go on for now over a month and breaking the record for the longest shutdown in the country's history.
And I know there's been a couple steps taken to try and restore some amount of funding to SNAP and to those families that need it, but I don't think it's enough. It's not enough. It's terrible. I think our government is doing a really bad job right now, and we definitely covered this in the editorial where we were just criticizing everything that was happening, and it's normal people that always pay. They're being affected, low income families are being affected, and it's because the sides of our government can't decide on a funding bill for us, and it's just terrible. It really shows how little they care about the general populace, and it's just disheartening.
Yeah, and then the other thing to sort of touch on as well is the fact that by law, members of Congress do get paid during shutdowns, so they aren't missing any paychecks. But of course, federal workers of any kind now are missing paychecks for, at least a couple pay periods. And so it is very disheartening. It is. And there's really just no other way to sort of spin it. I mean, we talked a few Noxcasts ago about when the shutdown initially happened, how Governor Kelly Ayotte said that, within the next month, we'll be pretty much unaffected, New Hampshire as a state. But then after a month, things get sort of rocky. And now we're past a month. So a lot of things up in the air. Obviously, the SNAP benefits top of mind. There's another article that we published in the region and state section about heating assistance program, which seems like it will continue at least, for the time being, for the next month or so. But again, it's just sort of domino after domino. If the longer it keeps going on, the less money there is to go around because it's not funded, and we're using reserve funds. There's only so many of that. So we'll keep you guys updated, our listeners, and just stay tuned for more info. Always look out for resources and see how you can help. One example of that being, how some of these small businesses have stepped up to the plate. But on an individual level, I think, checking in on people, trying to make sure if there's anyone in your life that might be struggling with, food insecurity in particular, to make sure that they are supported and know the resources that we do still have, because I think that's probably the most important thing during times like these.
Yeah, and I think it says a lot that we have multiple articles covering it in different sections, and it's just on the top of everyone's minds right now, I think, across the country. And we're going to start feeling the effects in New Hampshire. We already have, and it's just, we hope it will end soon, but the most we can do right now is just hope.
Yeah. Um, but sort of shifting gears now into some of our more regular coverage. The top story in student life was a piece by our sports editor, Jacob, who covered Pumpkin Palooza, which we also mentioned last Noxcast. Um, the Equinox did table there. I was there. I carved a pumpkin for it. So it was a fun time. We gave out some candy to the people that stopped by and visited us. So thanks to whoever stopped by. But it was a nice little piece, sort of just talking to some of the clubs that were around and tabling, and then also a couple attendees as well. It's an annual event that student government has put on for some time now, where people can sort of just go and check out some of the different clubs, and there's also some food and drinks. There was some nice little like sweet treats that the KSC dining provided, so that was cool. There was also like a pumpkin contest at the end. I don't know who won it, but there was a contest at the end. And the main huge difference, I guess, this year is the fact that there was a horse-drawn carriage on campus. So exciting stuff to see. I believe that was from the Office of Student Involvement that sort of put that out there. I think that could be a good tradition to add on if, the money's there to do that in future years as well. I think people enjoyed it. But it was a fun event. I was glad to be there. And this was also Jacob's first ever non-sports article. So kudos to him for stepping out of his comfort zone on this.
Yeah, and I managed to make it at the very end of the event, and it was really fun. Two of my friends and I went on the horse-drawn carriage, and that was just a great experience. I think seeing horses on campus just kind of made a lot of people happy. It was something different for Keene, definitely. And it was just all around like a really good time. I think the vibes were great, and I think it was nice to see students just really happy and having a good time on campus.
Yeah, it was a little bit windy, but that's unavoidable. What are you gonna do? So everyone made the best out of it, and everybody was a good sport and just a great time. But moving on now to our top story in arts and entertainment, we have a piece from our senior reporter Ryan Pacheco about the music department chair Christina Wright Ivanova, who's also the coordinator of keyboard studies. She will be leaving the school at the end of the semester, or following the end of the semester, I guess, to be chair of a school in the United Arab Emirates, and their program over there. So Christina is someone who's been at the school for some time, I believe almost a decade, and so a lot of her work and her legacy, mainly to hit on sort of, she played a massive part in the All Steinway campaign, making sure that Keene State got that level of distinction where all of our pianos are made by Steinway and Sons, which is the most distinguished and prestigious sort of piano maker in the country, and it's sort of the gold standard. So she's spearheaded that campaign. That was a big part of what she's done here, but also in addition to just providing plenty of musical support to different events, and also just teaching, being a professor. So it's kind of an interesting move to see someone leave the school, but then also go to a totally different country across a sea. This is a sort of 1.5 year deal. It's going to be like 3 semesters, and she has the option to either extend it once the time comes, or she can return to Keene State as well. So there is some flexibility. It's not necessarily set in stone that she'll be gone for the entire long term, but we don't know for sure. The music department does have steps in plan in terms of what will happen next, who's going to be the interim chair for the spring, and then also the chair for the following year. So it seems like they're making do with what they can. And yeah, I mean, wish Dr. Wright Ivanova the best, obviously. But yeah, it was came as sort of a surprise.
Yeah, I think it's very bittersweet to see her go, and I'm happy for the job opportunity for her. But it is crazy to see one of our professors leave and go to a completely different country. I think a lot of people were surprised by that. And it's just sad to see a lot of people leaving right now, especially amongst the staff reductions. So it makes that even more bittersweet overall.
Yeah, and it's sort of also talked about in one of the other quotes in the article from, I believe, the person who's going to be the interim chair, Dr. Heather Gilligan. She talks about um, sort of how they don't want students to panic or to sort of, tie one thing to another, where it's like former President Melinda Treadwell leaves, and now Christina leaves, and now everything is going downhill. They sort of want to make sure that there's as much stability as possible, and to sort of protect that student experience within the program. So I appreciate the honesty and like transparency from them on this. It's obviously not easy when anyone leaves, but they have a plan set in place, and wish Dr. Wright Ivanova the best, wish all the students the best, and we'll see going forward, how the interim structure works and stuff like that. But as for our top story in sports, we have some more good news here, to sort of switch gears. Is there was a LEC championship meet, so that's Little East Conference, where Keene State hosted 8 D3 teams at home, and this was cross country, both men's and women's. And the men's team took first place overall. The women's team took second place overall, and there was some standout runners as well. So Tyler Blasky got first on the men's side, Griffin Ernizis got second, Nicholas Terranova got fifth, and then Ben Tutu got 16th. On the women's side, Maggie St. John got second place, Callie Warner got 7th, and Ellie Takey got 16th, and then Maya Wedge got 19th. So overall, very good performances from our athletes over in the cross-country program, who were fortunate to have a couple people in the Equinox sphere who are on those teams as well. So love to see, more success for our athletes, and wishing them the best as they move on to NCAA regionals. I also had, just on like a separate, I guess more like individual note, I was able to speak with Tyler Blasky before this meet for just a class project. I did an interview with him, and it was nice to hear him sort of talk about his process over the off season, how much he really ramped up the practicing and running, and how confident he felt that he would really take that spot. And so I was really glad to sort of see that pay off, and just recognizing that student athletes are our peers, and sort of just seeing how well that they do, and representing the school in such a nice way is just really good to see.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. I think it's really nice to see some happy news in our sections after the kind of less fun topics that we covered this week in the other sections. And it's just nice to see our athletes doing so great. I feel like every time that we come on here, it's always something positive from them. It's always praising them. And I think they're just doing incredible this fall.
Yeah, it's a real, roller coaster these days with Noxcast, sort of just up and down with, these topics, but it falls where it lies. So there you go. But that concludes our recap for this week. So as always, I would like to extend a special shout out and thank you to the composer of the music for Noxcast, our very own Equinox alum, Zach Keenan, as well as the creator of the graphic for Noxcast, our very own art director, Elijah Fisher, and the editor of Noxcast, our very own multimedia director, Noelle